Hi and welcome to my guide to the most likely issues that are going to come up in the Wodd forestry exam for the CIMA strategic case study. My name's Nick Best, and what I'm going to be doing is in this video is using my, coming up for 10 years of experience, having seen case after case after case in that time, and real exam after real exam after real exam, in terms of, look, what does the information in the pre-scene guide us to what's going to come up in the exam? And there are some really big clues as to the types of things that will be in your exam. And so what I'm going to be doing then is doing my kind of countdown from 10 down to 1 in terms of 10, well, kind of quite likely, possible, down to 1, well, extremely likely, very likely to be in maybe 2 or 3 of the different variants in this particular case study. Okay, so I'm going to guide you through this. Now, what I also want to do is not just, here's the top 10, but actually guide you in terms of how to approach those questions. What should you do to score the most marks should those questions be the ones that come up? So that's going to be what I want to do in this this video guide. Okay, so now look, what's the basis of my choice? So first thing that I look at when I'm looking at the likely order of the issues is what's the focus in the pre-scene. So there are some issues in this Wodd pre-scene that just get mentioned again and again and again. They kind of come up on the very introduction on the first page, and then on the third page, and then later on, and they're just like little hints all the way through. Now, what does that mean? That means that the examiner is thinking about that. It's in the examiner's mind, and the way the examiner will write this pre-scene is they'll be writing the pre-scene and then very quickly follow it up with writing the different variants. And so what was in the examiner's mind during the writing of the pre-scene is very, very likely to be the focus of what's in the unseen. Now, occasionally you do get issues where the pre-scene does not hint at it at all. Okay, and well, look, the reality is, if you in your variant, there will be maybe 1 or 2 issues that don't that weren't mentioned at all. It'd be impossible to predict. But the reality is that the big ones are very often key focal points in the pre-scene. Next thing to think about is the strategic importance. How important is a particular issue to the company as a whole? What you have to remember here is that we are a senior manager in this company, reporting to the board. And so, again, look, think about it from the point of view of the examiner. You're about to write an issue, and you're about to write something like, it'll probably be that you'll be getting on the day of the exam an email from the director or the CEO, Peter Sochi in this case, and they're going to be asking you something. Now, in the examiner's mind, it's going to be, right, well, what do I want to know as the director? What do I want to know as the board of directors? And of course, the key things you want to know are focused on the areas of strategic importance. So what's important to the directors? Therefore, what are they going to be asking you to do some analysis of? Because your role is to analyse on their behalf. Okay. And finally, I'm going to be using my experience, basically, that there are certain issues that come up again and again and again. And what I want to do is to basically explain to you what those issues are, raise those issues with you, explain those issues to you, so that you say, well, look, this particular topic, this one comes up regularly, and I'll try and relate all these 3 together. So the ones that are really my top ones have got kind of all these things. They're regularly examined, they're important in terms of the exam, they're easy to write questions for, which is another one as well. They're of strategic importance, and they're real focus in the pre-scene. When you've got those 3 combination elements, you're very highly likely to get these coming up in the exam. Okay, and the reality is that I started doing this top 10 list about 2.5–3 years ago now, and since it came out, we've been really accurate with particularly the top issues. Actually, those sort of 8, 9, 10, they come up occasionally, but the top ones, the ones that really fulfill all these 3 criteria, really are highly likely to come up in your exams. There really is a very good correlation. I have to say, I was initially kind of quite surprised, although I've been teaching case studies for a long time. Maybe I didn't have as much faith in my own powers of prediction as perhaps I should have done, but I was really very pleasantly surprised when I started doing it. It just comes up again and again that the top 4 or 5 issues are virtually always there in the exams, and those sort of 6 to 10 are really quite likely to come up. So we do have some good success with these. Okay, so what do you need to be doing as you're preparing for these exams? First thing you can do is you can prepare some of the key models from the pre-seen information. Now, one thing I'm going to be doing in this guide is for each of the 10 issues, I'm going to be guiding you to what theory you can use. And some of that theory relates to the models. Now, just a kind of separate tip for you here, what's really crucial is you do need to adapt all models for the information that's in the unseen. You know, you might pre-learn your Ansof's matrix, for instance, but really that's of little use, because actually what they want you to do is to put the issues that are in the exam into the Ansof's matrix and then see what that means given the information that they're providing you on the day of the exam. So what you will always need to do is adapt any models on the day of the exam. What you must do is practice mock exams that cover these key issues. And I mean, look, you know, the practice of mock exams is the best way to practice for the case study. Funnily enough, I was just on, I just had a question on Facebook just before I started recording this video, and someone asked me, I just done a Facebook post, so please do visit my Facebook page, Nick Best Astranti, if you haven't looked at that, because I put loads of tips on there and it's there and available, so sign up and like that, and you'll get loads of my strategic case study tips. So I'll be putting loads of tips and industry examples on forestry on that page, so please do go on there and have a look. Anyway, that's by the by. I just had this question from a student, and she said, oh, would you say I should practice mock exams, or do you think I should look at past exam papers? But you know, the problem with past exam papers is they're not going to be on this current pre-seen. And we had a little debate on there. You can go on and take a look if you want to, because you'll be able to see the little debate that I've had with her about that. But the long and short of it is that you can go back and look at past exam papers. But of course, the previous case study was on football clubs. The one before that was on the oil and gas industry, and then it was a kind of Google type company. Look, forestry is so completely different. The issues that came up in those exams are really not going to be that much help. So the key for you is going to be practice as many mock exams as you can, and particularly you want ones that cover these issues, of course. Okay. Now, this is really crucial, is you need to get relevant real life examples. So look, you've got these 10 these 10 issues that I'm going to give you here. What you then need to do is to get maybe 2 or 3 specific real life examples for each of these 10 issues. Now, why is that so important? It's because you will get clear specific marks for bringing up industry knowledge in the exam, and if you can learn ones and prepare a sample paragraph for let's say 2 examples for each of these top 10. You've only learnt 20, and you've got probably the best set of industry examples you could learn, because they're focused on those that are most likely to come up. Okay, now learn other industry examples and do other industry analysis as well, but very important that you do that. So this is going to be a guide to where you focus your real life examples. Actually, I was just reading, as I'm recording this, we're just one day just after the latest SCS results, and I've just been reading some testimonials, and just a couple of people individually, separately, actually said that one of the best things that they'd done in their preparation was to prepare specific examples based around the likely issues. And so, it was just interesting to see that, that meant that people were able to bring up the best real life examples on the day of the exam. Okay. Now, the next thing that you can do to prepare is to learn the typical points that are going to come up. So, for instance, some typical advantages or disadvantages. I've got a few of those for you for some of the particular issues of doing something or not doing something. Okay. In a moment, you'll see we're going to cover foreign exchange. Okay, which is my top 10, my 10th issue, as it were. And what you'll see with that is that that's going to enable you to go away and learn some of the key hedging techniques, because that's more likely to be examined than maybe lots of other theory. So what are the key typical points that's going to help you to be well prepared should those things come up? Now, look, what I would say is that on the day of the exam, what you do need to do is adapt your points for the issues as they appear in the unseen. You might learn some general ones, but some of those may be relevant. You probably need to add a few in, given all the extra information that appears on the exam. Okay. Okay, and be prepared for which models to use. Okay, similar to the first point in a sense is what you'll have is a list of models, and you won't have just kind of learn the relevant ones, but you'll think, okay, this issue, here's the 3 models that I can use. I'm going to use these 2 to help me answer this particular question. Okay, so let's get on with issue 10 then, and my issue 10 is foreign exchange. Now, why do I think foreign exchange is going to be of relevance in this case? This is the strategic case study has come into fruition. You know, we're talking just under a year now. It has appeared as a variant in many SCS exams. It's interesting, actually, that virtually always the pre-seen case study is an international company. And look, perhaps one of the reasons why it comes up so commonly in this exam is that it's a topic that relates to both P3 and F3. And look, I know when I'm writing mock exams, is that I'm trying to, when we know the examiners do this, they're trying to pick up topics from each of the 3 papers. And they have to, because that's the way that the marking structure and the marking matrix works, is they're having to pick up some P3, some E3, some F3 in order to get the balance. And one of the most obvious topics to pick up then, because it hits a lot of, well, hits the P3 and F3 points then, is foreign exchange. So look, not only are we seeing this in the, you know, in many exams so far, it's a key P3, F3 topic, and you can see why then the examiner is kind of preferring this as a topic, because, you know, it's hitting many key points. Now, not only that, but it is of specific focus in the pre-seen. Now, look, the examiner has said that pulpwood is priced in US dollars, whereas Wodd's home currency is M dollars. Now, look, the fact is then that the examiner is as good as telling us, look, here is a big issue. Okay, that one of our main with selling pulpwood is basically timber, and that one of those main elements of what we're selling is priced in US dollars, and therefore the variability of M dollars against the US dollars is definitely going to be an issue that you need to be thinking about in this exam. Okay, but not only that, but it's particularly talking about potential variability in those rates in there too. So look, this is therefore highly likely to be an issue. It is also something which is of strategic importance as well, of course. Now, the strategic importance comes in terms of any long-term changes in exchange rate. The point being is that should the currency move unfavourably over the period of 1 or 2 years, and we see a kind of long-term movement in the foreign exchange, then what we've got in that instance is a long-term reduction in revenues, particularly from products that are kind of commodity products sold on markets like the pulpwood is. And therefore, that is going to affect long-term profitability. Okay, so definitely of strategic importance, and you know, that therefore something which must be taken into account. So what do I think the most likely issues are then? You know, what is it that you're likely to be facing? If I was writing this exam based on this, these are the couple of points. The first thing I might do is create a specific contract. Okay, certainly we've seen this in some past exams. The reason why this one is quite likely is it's very easy to set a specific question on the foreign exchange hedging techniques. And that's something that you should know. It's a little bit of theory that is relevant for P3 and F3, and therefore, now what they won't do is they won't be giving you a calculation to do. There'll probably most likely be a specific contract which is coming up. Maybe it's one of the big projects, a big leisure project, or, you know, we know that they've got these big consultancy projects that they do, and we've therefore got some money coming in from a customer 3 months down the line, but we're worried about variability in exchange rates. How do we hedge against that change? I think is a likely issue. The second big issue could be some kind of long-term change in exchange rates. So the point I was talking about before, which is going to make the whole industry less profitable over a long period. Now, the question then is likely to be more strategically focused. Look, what are our strategic options that will help you to deal with that long-term change? Okay, so those are the two I think most likely, certainly based on past exams and the way that the case is set up. So, look, what are the points you must raise then? Okay, so if you see those types of issues, well, look, obviously, if you see one about hedging, then it's the hedging technique. So look, I'm going to give you a quick reminder. Now, what I'm not going to be doing in these key points you must raise sections, in fact, on the models as well, is I'm not going to reteach you the whole of the theory. You're going to have to go back and look that up. But hopefully a quick reminder will bring it all back to mind enough, because hopefully you've just recently been studying this for your recent OT papers. Okay, so hopefully this will bring it back to mind. Okay, look, what could they do then? Let's imagine that we've got a contract is coming in 3 months' time. We've got some money coming in. Well, what we could have done was invoices in the home currency. Okay, now in the question that I've just set, well, it's a bit late now, but maybe we could be doing that in the future to always invoice in the M dollars. Okay, now what I'm thinking about here is not the selling of pulpwood on markets under US dollar rates. I'm thinking about specific contracts, overseas contracts, which we can decide how we price that. Of course, the customer might not be happy with that, because as soon as you invoice in your home currency, they will be susceptible to the foreign exchange differences. And so the company will need to be in quite a strong position to say, no, just pay us in M dollars, please. We're not going to accept anything else. So you do have to bear that in mind, that that's less good for the customer. You could do some leading and lagging. Okay. What we could do, for instance, here is we could just say, right, okay, well, we'll set up a foreign exchange bank account, and we'll accept the money into that bank account in 3 months' time, and then we'll just leave it there and wait until the foreign exchange rates are better. Okay, so we're basically, with leading and lagging, you're either paying early or you're waiting, you're sort of delaying the payments coming in. Or maybe you could be trying to encourage someone to pay earlier with a discount if you think that the foreign exchange rates are very advantageous earlier on. So we're trying to do our foreign exchange transactions when the rates are more favourable. Now, to be able to do that, of course, you've got to have some sort of reasonably accurate predictions of where the markets are going, which you might have a foreign exchange broker or your bank that would help support you, or a treasury department. Now, we know nothing about Wodd's treasury department. One thing that is actually worth saying about this is we're told nothing about their treasury department in the case. We've got very little information. Do they have the skills and abilities to do these things? And you may well find this, that they don't have those skills if they haven't got a really good treasury department on some of the more complex methods like futures and options, and so therefore maybe you want to keep to some more simple techniques. Okay, so next is netting using foreign currency bank accounts. So simply the idea of netting is, perhaps we've got some money coming in US dollars, and actually we've just bought some equipment. We're also paying for that in US dollars. So let's say we've got the money coming in of 100 million, and we're paying out 50 million for some equipment. Well, what we can do is just take the money in US dollars, store it in the bank account in US dollars, pay the money out in US dollars, and so actually the final amount that we actually have to convert is just the 50 million. And therefore, rather than having one big transaction exchange of 100 million and another of 50 million in the other direction, you only exchange the difference. Okay, so that may be possible, particularly if they're buying equipment. It's hard because it's a funny case in some ways on the international side, because they talk about international risks in the risk management section. It's obviously an international business, but we don't have any international divisions, and there's no talk of which countries they operate in. In fact, most of the talk is about just operating in Marland, and yet there's this hints of all this international stuff going on with which there's very little detail. So it's very, very hard to know exactly what money will be coming in and going out in other currencies, other than the general sales of pulpwood being going out in M dollars, of course. Okay, next we've got forwards. Now with forwards, we agree a foreign exchange rate now. And we agree that with the bank. It's very clear, it's very quick, it's very simple. So the money that's coming in 3 months' time, we know what rate we're getting. Okay, there's no doubt, there's no debate. Simple, clear, easy. Forwards, that's one you should definitely be considering. Okay, futures is where you go to the money markets and you buy futures. And what you end up doing with futures is you set up a transaction that will win a bet, effectively, whereby, let's say in the next 3 months we lost some money on our foreign exchange transaction, we would effectively end up winning the futures bet, and the two would match against each other. and vice versa. If we lost on the foreign exchange, we won on the foreign exchange, we would lose the bet, and therefore they would balance off against each other. It's more complex, but it's quite doable. Someone with a good treasury department should be able to do that. Next is a money market hedge. Now with a money market hedge, you enter into all your foreign exchange transactions now. So what we would do in this case, well, we would borrow the money. Let's say we're owed $1 million in 3 months' time. Well, we would borrow almost $1 million, okay? Something like that, a bit less than $1 million actually. And we would convert that now. So we've immediately got that in M dollars. Then what we'll do is we've got a loan basically in a foreign currency. And we set the loan up so that we know exactly in 3 months' time when we're going to get our money in, that it's going to be, when you take the original amount plus the interest, we're going to have $1 million owed, and therefore we pay that off with $1 million that comes in. Okay, but what you'll notice about that is that we've entered into the foreign currency transaction now by borrowing the money now and doing the foreign exchange now, and therefore that's the way the money market hedge works. Or we could do an option. Remember, with an option, the option gives us the choice not to go ahead. They're more expensive, but on the positive side, if things go well, we don't have to take out the option and we can have all the positive gain on that transaction too. So I do think in this exam, awareness of hedging techniques and a quick bit of revision for you. Don't worry too much about all the numbers in any of those techniques, but do be aware of how each of those hedging techniques works. Okay. Now look, the second type of question that can come up are these sort of long-term change in profitability. And I think that some key issues you need to raise here is to look at the long-term market predictions. How do we think that the exchange rates against the US dollar are going to move over the next 6 months, year, 2 years? You may even go back to your interest rate parity and purchasing power parity theory. You could mention that basically the difference in interest rates and the difference in inflation rates on both those theories means that you can predict where the exchange rates are going to move over the medium term. Now, of course, there are experts in the money markets that will also basically be able to tell you where that is. But you could do it yourself, or you could talk to your experts at the banks to get you a view of where that's moving. Then we will need to consider, look, what impact is that then going to have on the strategy and on the way that we're going to approach this. And we're going to have to look at some ways of actually managing that. Perhaps one thing we could do is international diversification, so we're not so dependent on any one currency. Now that's going to be really hard with the pulpwood market if it's all priced in US dollars. But perhaps on some of our project work, we could have different projects in different parts of the world, so we're less dependent on any one currency moving adversely. We possibly also want to shore up our market within Marland as well, which appears to be very successful, to be fair. But of course, that's not dependent on exchange rates either. So that could be an additional point as a way to manage this in the long term. Okay, some business diversification could be an issue as well, but I'm going to kind of come up on that on a later issue. So more on that issue at a later point. So what kind of theory can you use then? Well, look, not surprisingly, your foreign exchange hedging techniques are going to be the main ones. As part of a Pestel analysis, if you were asked to do some more kind of industry analysis, then you could bring that up here. Now, look, here's a tip for you, and here's a key point. The examiner does not like people just listing models. If you just look through the examiner's past exam guidance, and just huge hate, despising just listing out a model. And I've seen people often do this with Pestel. They'll say, oh, well, exchange rates have moved. This is the E in Pestel analysis. And you won't get any marks for that. Okay? But if you've got a broader question, maybe a more broader industry analysis that you're asked to do, then bringing up the E under that is the change in exchange rates, and interest rates, of course, links through to exchange rates using the interest rate power parity theory, then that would be a very good point to put under the E as part of a Pestel question. But the key here is going to be your hedging techniques. Okay, so that's issue 10, foreign exchange. If you're watching the sample video, then this is where the sample ends. And I hope you found this first 20 minutes of our full video useful to you, and you found it interesting seeing what I think is the 10th most likely issue to come up. The full video series is an hour and 40 minutes in length, so I'll go through my other 9 issues with you. I go through the models that I like to come up. I recap some of the models, the ones that I think are most relevant, and try and apply them to the case study as well. I look at the key points that you should be raising. So on some of them, I specifically list out what some of the advantages and disadvantages of some of the issues are, some of the key things for you to go away and learn. And certainly I know that people that work through those really are in the best position of just getting some feedback in yesterday, because yesterday was the day that people got their exam results for SCS, and a number of points on the feedback came through was that the top 10 issues list was just brilliant, because it meant that they could prepare perfectly the models that they were going to use. They could prepare the industry examples that they were going to be relevant. They were ready for many of the issues that actually they did see in their exam. So I hope you'll think it's beneficial, therefore, to go on and purchase the remainder of the pack and the video series as well. But of course, what you can also do is you can go through creating your own top 10 issues list. You can look through the pre-scene, look at the things that the pre-scene is hinting at, and then once you've done that, you come up with your likely issues, and then you go and learn industry examples on those. You go and prepare which models you think are going to be most useful for you to use. You start to prepare a list of advantages and disadvantages. So you really can do a lot of good work yourself if you want to go down your own self-study route. But hopefully you'll think that getting my advice and guidance and support on that will be useful to you too. Okay, whatever you decide to do, best of luck with your studies as you go through towards this SCS exam.